All right, let's do a little bit of sound. So look, let's start out of the gate. Let's start with the dishonorable mentions before the honorable mentions. We've explained so many times the structural problems with Andrew Yang's proposals. And I think really honestly though, what it really does come down to in so many respects, one is the really simple one, if UBI is an add-on to a mass program like a Green New Deal and everything else, cool, it's fine, great, whatever. It can be a useful thing. The way he frames it is essentially we can't solve big problems. We can't really do anything about the corporate monopolies and oligarchies that rule our life. I just have a fundamental disagreement with. I know that really triggers folks. We're occasionally going to do content. And still, honestly, as an olive branch to Yang fanatics, he's absolutely, even though I fundamentally disagree, I mean, he's definitely by far a more interesting presence on the stage, and occasionally he points to very real important things like the opioid crisis, like the collapse of the industrial sector, all of these. I mean, those are real problems. This is still a world where I have to listen to Michael Bennett or Amy Klobuchar. So, of course, in that
still running?
Exactly.
Jeez, yeah.
In that depressing context, kudos for Andrew Yang for occasionally saying something interesting. But I also do find a lot of the people who support him, not all of them, but some of the people that we interact with are very cult-like, very fanatical, and it's a little troubling, the inability to kind of analyze and accept criticism, even if you disagree with it. But this really leapt out to me. I mean, I think it's stunning that somebody who's running a kind of eccentric issue campaign could still have such a reactionary position on the complete lack of rights, democracy, and basic dignity for people in the Middle East. This is actually an extremely reactionary position, and very bizarre that he would put it forward, and really bad. This is Andrew Yang getting asked about Israel-Palestine.
In terms of the money we're giving to an ally like Israel, my first instinct would be like, why would we reduce it? So certainly if I communicated something else, that's not the idea at all. There are certain relationships we have that, to me, we need to rebuild and strengthen. And I would suggest that our relationship with Israel is one of them.
And what about the Arabs?
You'd have to look at it in a case by case and say, like, what's happening in terms of our bilateral relationship with a particular party. But my zeal is to try and build strong alliances and partnerships. If someone's been working with us for a long time, they should feel like they're being rewarded for that, frankly. And then if someone has an interest in working with us, we should be open to rewarding that too. But for each country, you'd have to look at what's going on at that time and what the lead-in has been.
So when it comes to land in Israel that's being taken, even though it was granted to certain Palestinian families by the UN, how do you feel about constricting Israel almost to prevent that from happening, and constricting political influence by American leaders in Israel?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll answer it more generally, which is, like, my stance on this is that it's going to be hard for the United States to constrict an ally or really just about any of its partners in a decision that they feel is central to them, and I don't think that's our priority. It's not that we're somehow giving people aid so that we can then twist their arm about things that that they find important.
I mean, there is something just so off-putting. But look, I mean, here's the reality, is that that's precisely how we use aid. That's also precisely what I want to say again, is that Bernie Sanders is the only person here with any type of credibility on this issue, because he's the only one who's brought up aid as a tool to do something about the oppression and killing of Palestinians. Elizabeth Warren won't touch it. No one else will touch it. Tulsi Gabbard voted for the anti-free speech BDS bill as an example. But I mean, it's just very disturbing that Andrew Yang has such a, first of all, totally right-wing, conventional, anti-human view. He talks about humanity first. That's humanity last. Yeah. And secondly, he doesn't know what he's talking about, because even by the very reactionary, diluted metrics he's using, the relationship between Israel and the United States is great. You have two far-right, bigoted leaders who are aiding each other in the occupation, the disenfranchisement of Palestinians, and mutual Islamophobic rhetoric, and even echoes of Trump's atrocities at the border, which, by the way, I don't hear Andrew Yang saying much about either. So Not good, very bad, disgusting. And I really hope people who constantly whine and freak out about any Yang criticism, if you identify as a progressive and you identify as having some type of world concern, I hope you'll acknowledge that your candidate needs to have a hell of a lot better position than that, because that was pretty disgusting. This is Bernie Sanders speaking the truth and the necessity on Israel.
Senator, good to see you. What's your reaction to President Trump asking the president of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to do this, and Netanyahu obliging?
We should just say this is about the supposed request by Netanyahu. I don't know how established it was, but we can guess it probably happened. That Trump said, don't let Ilhan and Rashida Tlaib into Israel, right?
Right.
Well, I wish I could tell you, Ali, that I am shocked. I am not. We have a president who tragically is a racist, is a xenophobe, and who is a religious bigot. But the idea that a member of the United States Congress cannot visit a nation, which, by the way, we support to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, is clearly an outrage. And if Israel doesn't want members of the United States Congress to visit their country to get a firsthand look at what's going on, and I've been there many, many times, but if he doesn't want members to visit, maybe he can respectfully decline the billions of dollars that we give to Israel.
Elizabeth Warren said that it undermines Israel's image as a tolerant democracy that they wouldn't let Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in. Israel is literally an apartheid state. When she says something like that, that is not just embarrassing, it's actually a fundamental insult to the humanity of millions of people. And it's very clear that Bernie Sanders is the only one who stands anywhere here. Period. I mean, Yang didn't even do the whole like, well, maybe in exchange for being stateless and having no political rights whatsoever, we could rebate them some money. I mean, he could have at least given his answer to everything. Come on.
I mean, I'm just going to jump in here and say I'm always fascinated by where money comes from to support candidates.
Yes.
And so I feel like if you dig into Yang, you'll see where his money comes from, and you'll probably be able to draw the line to, someone who has told him he can't say those things, or for whatever reason he has chosen that side of the argument. I feel like everyone's opinions on Palestine and Israel has something to do with the money that they're getting. Like, no one seems to have a very genuine opinion on it, except for Bernie. You're right. Except for Bernie.
The way Yang phrased that, like, I didn't mean to get the impression that we would do anything to pressure Israel.
I definitely didn't mean to do anything.
So if I did, I want to retract what you thought I said and just put it very clearly that no.
I think PW Botha has done a lot for us in sub-Saharan Africa, and I wouldn't ever want to give anybody the impression that just because they have Nelson Mandela in prison and black people can't walk on the street that they can't be our allies.
I mean, but this really highlights the fundamental problem with Yang too, is that he's an eccentric who's found one policy solution that he finds to be quite interesting, and his lack of worldview is very clear in that moment.
What is the worldview of a right-wing corporate Manhattan Democrat?
Honestly, I think that's just the default generic position that if you're enculturated in the United States of America, that's the position that you take. It's not even a calculated move on his part as much as it is that he just really is not considering the world and the different kind of forces that affect policy and create these kind of human disasters.
Absolutely.
Right. But to me, that's what created that like tier 3 candidate. Like all these candidates who are in tier 3, they all have that one note that they can hit and they can't touch anything else. And so I've named them, aptly. Like, so he's the UBI guy. And I don't expect him to say very much else or have an opinion that I would, listen to and buy into on anything else, because he is the UBI guy.
UBI
and
guy.
Like you said earlier,
by the year 2040, robots will be able to have sex with truck drivers.
He should embrace that and say, I'm the UBI guy.
Right. Like, don't ask me about Israel and Palestine.
I'm not the Israel-Palestine guy. I'm the UBI guy.
Would that be funny if he actually did have more of an attitude like that? Like, I'm sorry, it looks like you confused me with the Israel-Palestine guy. I'm the UBI guy, idiot.
I mean, that would help me to keep a lot of them like clear. Like, okay, you're the UBI guy.
He's the
you're
UBI guy. Klobuchar's the we can't accomplish anything. I yell at my SAF woman. Michael
the
Bennett's
mean girl. I call her mean girl.
She's the mean girl. Michael Bennett's the... I literally don't even remember what he is. I'm not even trying to make a crack.
He's the, I don't know him.
I don't know that guy. Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. And then the other ones are just not even going to be at the next debate, so who cares? You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.